Modern Horizons 3 is upon us, but we've already got the spoilers for the Commander deck, so let's go ahead and build one. Today we're going to be talking about Goyf Mommy. We're going to be talking about Disa The Restless, which is going to be the Jund commander. 2 and Jund, legendary creature, human scout. Whenever a Goyf permanent card is put into your graveyard from the battlefield from anywhere, from anywhere other than the battlefield, put it onto the battlefield. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a Goyf token. Now, what we're going to try to do in this deck is to hopefully try to get 3 Goyfs onto the battlefield. Now, this is going to be a $100 deck. We also don't know what's in the commander deck, so there's not a lot of Goyf, Goyf, great cards to put into the deck. There might be some in this commander deck, but this is generally the direction that I want to put it at, and it's only going to be $100 or so. So just to preface that, there are no doubling tokens in this deck, so there's no doubling season, there's no parallel lives, unfortunately. But we're really gonna focus on making some Goyfs. It's pretty ridiculous. It used to be a modern staple, it used to be $100 something card. Now it's, I think, around 18 to 20 bucks, but now it's just a token. But let's see what we're gonna be putting into this deck to really try to make this deck work, especially at $100. You know, I say that and I feel like, oh, it's just $100. $100 is still a lot of money, but I feel like a lot of people are spending. Magic is so expensive nowadays that it's so easy to reach the $100 mark. But yeah, our first segment is gonna be Can't Touch This. Then we're gonna be focusing on cards that are gonna be early game drops that we can set up the board. So once we put Disa onto the battlefield, these ones can at least hopefully try to produce us 3 Goyfs for that turn. So we have Fairy Dream Thief, 1 black flying. When it enters the battlefield, lets us surveil, so it lets us feed into the Goyf power and toughness. But we could also exile it from the battle, from our graveyard, to draw a card and lose a life. Now, I didn't really want to fill this deck with just nothing but unblockable creatures. I wanted creatures that are going to be able to do other things besides being unblockable or having some sort of evasion. So that's why this is in here. Spire Tracer, there's not too many in green and red that have unblockable or flying as much, but this one is sort of unblockable with the flying and reach, and you just got to splash in a couple other colors in there just in case you don't get your mana at the start. And we have Battlefly Swarm, which we can also gain Death Touch, so people can kind of think about not blocking just because they don't want their creature to die as well. We also have cards like Loyal Apprentice, which is going to give us Thopter flying tokens with haste as long as our commander's on the battlefield, so that's great. A nice little throwaway card, or throwaway creature to maybe get the damage through or just keep the pressure on our opponents. Champion of Lamphold is super sweet in this deck. Our curve is pretty low in this deck, so we should be able to trigger this off fairly well. Get this to maybe like 4 or 5 +1/+1 counters, and then all of our creatures will be unblockable. And we do, in our finisher section, we do have some pump effects that will just make it even harder for our opponents to block. And then Vasa Narada, this one's great because it has indestructible, it has shadow, which means only shadow creatures can block it, and it also has morbid, so every time one of our creatures dies, this guy just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the only thing to really get rid of it is an exiler, like a Path to Exile or something, or Chaos Warp. Double Time, these are going to be our creatures that are going to serve more than a purpose of just being a creature, because Goyf really does care about different card types in the graveyard. It's like Delirium and all that stuff. So before Delirium was a thing, so we have Ginger Brew, which has it's a 1-drop colorless haste. You can pay 1, so it can't be blocked unless a creature has haste, and then you could sacrifice it, gain 3 life, feeding our Goyfs for 2+2 power and toughness because of the artifact, and it's a creature. We have Hope of Gift, for also another artifact creature, but it also has the caveat of stopping somebody from possibly winning the game if we dealt them combat damage with it. And then we have Greater Tanuki. I really wish we had more channel cards that are enchantment creatures, because this will also have one, it'll ramp us up. We could do that at instant speed with the channel ability, but then also it just ramps us up, and it also feeds our Tarmogoyfs for 2 for being an enchantment and a creature. We have and some of our other non-creature permanents are going to be able to sacrifice themselves to feed our graveyard. So we have cards like Mind Stone and Commander Sphere, which can tap and sacrifice itself to draw us a card. This one you have to tap one and draw a card. You can't tap it for mana. Obviously, you guys know that already. We have Tinderwall, which is going to be a creature that can sacrifice itself for 2 red mana to possibly get Disa out turn 3 or turn 4, depending on whatever's on the board. But again, also it'll feed our graveyard requirements for our Tarmogoyfs. And then we have Song of Freyalise. I really wanted to put more sagas in here, but it's just a one-time deal. If we already have an enchantment, then having a lot of sagas isn't really going to make a lot of sense. But this one at least gives all of our mana dorks or not mana dorks, but our smaller creatures the ability to become mana dorks. And then when we hit the 3rd chapter, it gives them all +1/+1 counters, and then Vigilance, Trample, and Indestructible, which is great. Possibly if we could finesse this into setting it up where we could possibly go for the win, it could give us that as well. More than the token. So this is going to be the segment where we're not only just benefiting from our creatures dealing combat damage just from making tokens, but from making other things as well. I guess other tokens, but more than just the Tarmogoyf tokens, right? We have Bloodchief Ascension, which is a 1 black enchantment. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life, put a quest counter on it, and then whenever you have 3 or more, anytime a card goes into the bin for your opponents, they lose 2 and you gain 2 life. Really awesome. I was telling people to pick these up when Double Masters or Commander Masters or whatever, I forgot the set, came out, because they dropped to like $2-3, and now they're back up to like $10 to $12. It's just a really good card, and you guys, if you didn't pick them up now, it's what are you gonna do? Toski Bear Secrets is going to give all of our unblockable and evasion creatures the ability to draw us cards when they deal combat damage. Same with Orin Frostfang, but it also gives us our attacking creatures Death Touch. So even if they have blockers, they might not want to lose the blockers. But you never know. But at least this also just gives us another way to draw more cards, because or like I said, our mana curve is pretty low, and so we want to go ahead and refill as much as possible. I really wanted to put Gix in here as well, but it's a $20 card. It's a little too much. We also have Professional Facebreaker, which is going to give us a treasure per player that we hit, so hopefully we're gonna hit 3 treasures by the time our combat step is done. We have Rose, Cutthroat Raider. This is like sort of a pet card for me. I kind of want to pick up as many as possible just because I really like this card. It's a 2/2 red legendary artifact creature robot from the Fallout set. First strike, raid. At the end of combat in your turn, if you attack this turn, create a junk token for each opponent you attack. Now, junk tokens, you can sacrifice that artifact, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card. You could only activate it as a sorcery, but whenever you sacrifice a junk, you add a red. So not only is it giving us Impulse Draw, I believe that's what it's called. I always forget the lingo for all these type of things. But it also ramps us a little bit. Now, it might ramp us to something pretty big, but like I said, our curve is pretty low, and so hopefully we're going to accumulate a lot of value from just Rose just being on the battlefield. And then we have Orochi Soul Weaver, super sweet card. It has ninjutsu, so we can ninjutsu it for one of our little tiny 1/1 creatures or 2/2 creatures or whatever. And then whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and manifest the top of that player's library. So not only is it going to give us the ability to ramp a little bit, but it's also going to give us extra bodies onto the battlefield. So really good card. Kind of need to pick one up right now. And this is going to be our finishers for the deck. You know, you always kind of get stuck. You're like, how am I going to finish this game? Well, my favorite one for this, especially for the amount of Tarmogoyf tokens that we might have onto the battlefield, we have Gerard Golgari Lich Lord, 2 black, 2 green, legendary creature, zombie elf. When it enters the battlefield, it gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard, and then you could pay 1 and Golgari, sacrifice another creature. Each opponent loses life equal to the sacrificed creature's power, and then you could sacrifice a swamp and a forest to get it back from your graveyard to your hand. We should theoretically have a bunch of Tarmogoyfs onto the battlefield. Hopefully they're around 4/5s to 5/6s, depending on how late in the game we are, or how fast we're able to fill up our graveyard with different kind of card types. But to dome out, maybe we have, I don't know, a lot of mana open to be able to dome out maybe 10 damage, 8 to 10 damage, like 4 to 5 damage per activation could possibly end the game right there. But the great thing about it is we could also pair it up with other things like, I don't know, Overrun, which is 2 and 3 green creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. And this we could swing out, deal as much damage as possible, and then whatever is getting blocked and possibly killed after that block, we can use Gerard to sacrifice it and dome out the damage that way. Or we could even use Overwhelming Stampede, which doesn't give our creatures trample, unfortunately, but we do have Garruk's Uprising in the deck, because one, that'll possibly get us more card draw every time we create a Tarmogoyf token, and then also give our creatures trample. But our commander is 5/6, so at the least, if our commander is out, it should be out, all of our creatures get +5/+6, and or +5/+5, and then we can swing out that way, apply pressure, clear the board, whatever, and then with Gerard, again, throw damage around. Now we're dealing maybe 9 to 10 damage per activation. So definitely a fun deck. I think I was pretty harsh on my YouTube short about this, but you know, I think it's fine. It's a fine casual, high casual possibly deck. I mean, obviously the more in price you go, the higher the ceiling is, obviously. But I think as just a fun like tabletop deck, I think this is going to be great. It's going to be fun, you know, when you're just playing with your friends and all that stuff. But yeah, that's going to be the end for this. Obviously I'll update it once the commander deck list comes out for this, because there might be some good Lurgoyfs that I could put in here, I can slot in here and still keep it under $100, but we shall see. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and we always appreciate you.